Welcome to Cerius Leadership, where we bring you the tools and insights to lead your business with confidence. Today, we're continuing our Strategic Advisor series, really diving into a crucial yet often overlooked aspect of running our business, everyone's favorite topic, business insurance. I am joined by Kieffer Rittenhouse, insurance expert, and Kieffer, really a client advocate. What are the right questions we should be asking, how to avoid surprises, and we'd really like to dive in some of those external factors that's impacting what protection we actually need at various stages of our business. So whether we're growing, scaling, or just trying to stay ahead, I think this episode is going to arm us with knowledge to partner smarter with our insurance experts. Kieffer, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Chris, and I'm really been looking forward to this for a while now.
Mainly because we get to chat. We've known
Yeah,
each other for
exactly.
a
Yeah,
while.
left coast, right coast. Yeah, right.
And I would say that though you're one of the first people I would invite to a party because you are way too much fun, I am sure the first thing a business owner isn't thinking is, hey, I get to speak with my insurance specialist. It's one of those things where it's the last thing we want to deal with in growing our business, yet it's the first thing we are thankful for when we need it.
Yeah, I tell you what, I mean, it's all about worst case scenarios, how you use your insurance. You don't want to nickel and dime the insurance companies, but if you look at all the catastrophes that we've had across the country in the recent past years with the fires in California and the hurricanes in Florida and North Carolina, it's just one of those things that you really want to bank on and have a good product that you can trust when the catastrophe happens.
When you look at being an advocate and an advisor, is it a matter of figuring out what's the right package, which is the right insurance company? Because you mentioned insurance companies. Are they kind of all the same and you're going to end up with a lot of the same pricing and it's you as the advisor that makes a difference? Or is it really selecting that right insurance company to partner with?
Yeah, I think, in the past, the society's kind of labeled insurance as a commodity. And, you have the different carriers that advertise a lot on TV and say, they're great at this and great at that. And they can save you $600 on your personal insurance and they get the hook in your mouth and it's hard to spit it out. And you forget about the local insurance agent or your trusted advisor who you've dealt with for years. And you want to go that route to save the money because it's real money. It sounds juicy and exciting to save $600, but really you do need an advocate. You really need somebody that you can trust to place that coverage for you that doesn't, sell you insurance, but sells you, a relationship, a product that you can know and trust. And that's how I've been successful.
And I imagine that there's certain, like, I don't know that I've ever read my policy beginning to end. People who are much smarter than me go through that. And for a reason, I'm an owner, short attention span. I
Nope.
remember getting auto insurance back in the day. I didn't read through it. I didn't understand what all the coverages are. I was nickel and diming it. And then I got in an accident and I did not have the rental car coverage.
Yeah,
Six
that's right.
weeks, no rental car coverage. And at that stage of my life, that just killed me
Yep.
financially.
Yeah, and you
I,
probably saved, $150 off the bottom line where you probably spent,
oh,
$2,000 paying for 15 days of rental car coverage.
I'm still traumatized by that
Yeah,
experience.
same.
I'm sure there's some similar things that as you get in and you're advising clients or just business owners, you've certainly been an incredible advisor to say, here's where you should not be cutting corners. Here are the gaps in your current coverage. What are some things that are common that you see?
Yeah, I think deductibles are a great way to save money, and if you have a good cash flow, taking your deductibles up across the board is really a solid way of saving money. Um, the whole word on the TV right now is bundle, bundle, bundle. Moving your coverages to one carrier to leverage that, financial package that you have with that one carrier in case you have a bad year on your property or a bad year on your auto. You have it all with one carrier that can weigh the losses over several policies as opposed to just one policy. and it makes a difference in that. So that matters as well too. So consolidation of coverages and carriers, and I think deductibles are a good way of trying to save money and be responsible.
You mentioned coverage a number of times. So from a business owner perspective, what types of coverage am I
You know,
needing? And does that change over time?
the key word is BOP, business owner's policy, which kind of encompasses general liability, property, gives you it's kind of like homeowners, covers you from your home, your liability. A BOP is a business owner's policy, which does the same thing, but covers your business from a basic standpoint. And as you grow, you add different levels to that coverage and, things like that, but it gets more sophisticated. But, it's general liability, property, workman's comp, cyber liability is the big buzzword. Management liability, covers, errors and omissions and things like that that we've talked about in the past together. And then employment practices liability, if you have a lot of employees, is an issue from, wrongful termination and things like that. So there's a lot of basic cover, a lot of great coverages out there. And my philosophy is always to be insurance smart, not insurance poor. If your company's just starting out, you want to buy within your means and buy what makes sense. And I was on a call with a customer this morning. They're growing, they're getting really busy. And we said we'll take baby steps and we'll communicate with one another and we'll talk through the process. And as you grow, we'll implement the different phases of the insurance that matter. And I told them that sometimes you get a new customer that comes in that requires a lot of insurance that makes a difference. And, we have to amend the coverage accordingly. So there's a lot of variables that kind of play against what you need and what you don't need, but it's all about communication and talking to your clients and really listening to your clients.
You mentioned that, look, we'll talk as we go. And if you get a new client that's requiring it, what are some of those triggers? Because I don't think we realize as a course of business, again, the first thing I get a new client coming in or something happens to my business, I'm not thinking I need to call Kieffer. I need to call my insurance part. I just want to call you to call you. I do want to just call you to talk, but generally not discussing coverage. What are some of those triggers to look for to say we need to be assessing it?
I think one of the things is like whenever you get a new client in or you get a new piece of business in that you have to work, they always ask for proof of coverage, an insurance certificate. And then what happens is, we'll send out a generic certificate of insurance to that customer and they'll come back and they'll have 5 things that we have to change on the policy. And those 5 things could be adding coverage for cyber, which happens a lot. It could be adding, waiver of subrogation or additional insured status to the documents, to the insurance policies, which causes us to have to file an endorsement, which could increase the premium and things like that. So it's kind of funny. Normal business owners don't get involved in the day-to-day insurance stuff, but when they get a new client, it's like all of a sudden they're thrown into the hot seat about, oh, this needs to change, that needs to change, and it's $3,000 later, and they didn't factor that into the cost of doing business with that client. That could be a deal breaker and could not be, but they're the things that we sweat those details when we're working with our clients.
How often are you working with clients, or what should I be expecting in my working with my insurance individual? Because I get a policy renewal every year. That's about it. We're not getting together outside of that. What is that normal case of making sure that you're coordinating? Because I'm sure there's other things going on in the business that it's helpful to stay updated. Is it that just once a year, let's touch base?
No, it's not. And thank goodness it isn't. We're definitely more engaged. Behind me, there's a team of people that help represent my clients and help my clients out. So, our team tries to get in front of our clients at least 4 times a year, if not more than that, depending on the service and requirements the client has. But at the renewal, we spend a lot of time going through the policies and marketing the policies. And then, every 3 to 4 months after that, we check in with the client to make sure that they have the things that they need, auto ID cards, certificates of insurance, make sure that the claims are being managed properly. We get involved on a daily basis with claims or on a monthly, quarterly basis with our clients on claims, managing workers' comp claims and older liability claims. Auto is an area that we spend a lot of time helping their clients manage the claims and things like that. So, and then, 6 months, 90 days prior to the renewal, as we try to market it or really kind of find a better product that
Mhm.
is molded to what your company does better, and we go to the marketplace and try to get a better product and bring you in something better that gives you better coverage and better premium dollars. So, I would say without certificate and daily servicing, we try to get in front of our clients at least, 3 to 4 times during the policy period.
I didn't realize that. So is that something that I should be expecting of uh, whoever each of us is using as business owners, that each year go to market? I've heard that recently with health insurance from a benefits broker who said, like, every single year, do not make it automatic. Look and see, is self-insured the right thing? Is PEOs the right thing? Every single year, assess it, because things are changing so quickly right now. Are you seeing the same thing?
I mean, the health insurance market is certainly a volatile market that you definitely have to be diligent, especially if you have a significant amount of employees, because that money drops, the money you save drops to the bottom line quickly. Insurance, I have clients that don't want to see me, right? They trust me. They know that they can pick up the phone and they can call my cell phone, and they don't want to see me. They just know that I have their back and I'm taking care of them. But some of my clients, really want more of a service plan put together, and we practice kind of the platinum rule at the beginning of when we write a new client. Platinum rule is basically we sit down with them and find out how they want to be treated, as opposed to us assuming how they want to be treated like all our other clients. And we lay out a plan for them that works for them and that they want to see us, every quarter or what have you. And they want, this type of communication, and this is who they work, and this is their team that we communicate with. So we customize, how we approach our clients. And certainly we have some smaller clients and bigger clients that really dictate what type of service levels we provide. But yeah, you should really be seeing your client, your insurance broker, talking to your insurance broker, you know, a couple times a year. It's all about how much you pay them, but it's a service that successfully we've been, we need to maintain and live up to, how we're getting paid.
And as I'm thinking through what I need for my business, I'm partnering with my insurance individual. What are the various insurance needs, or what are the things that I just may not be thinking that I need coverage on something, or may not realize that I could get coverage? Because this is one thing, once it happens, there's no rolling back the clock. There is no do-over.
Yeah.
Once that happens, what are some of the more common ones that you see? And individuals say either, I wish I had coverage, or thank goodness you told me about that. And it might be missing from a lot of policies.
It's a great question, and the cyber liability insurance is something that a lot of people don't have. And I had a situation a couple months ago where I had a small manufacturing company in Maryland, had a cyber breach, and they were doing some work on their cable, and hackers came in through the cable line because the firewall was down, and they basically took over their servers and hijacked their system. And a $3,500 cyber liability policy with $1 million limit paid 180 grand to that client for being down for 45 days and not being able to access their computer equipment and their client base and all their programming on their computers and things like that. And if you do the math on that, it's a win-win. And my customer could have been put out of business because of that. So for $3,500, they're offsetting the risk to a major insurance company with great coverage that went in and swooped in and no questions asked, managed the claim and paid them for their lost time and their aggravation and helped them get back up and running pretty quickly in the scheme of things.
You mentioned a part of cyber coverage. I think that there's, from what my limited understanding, I want to pick this part a little, that there's different things that we should be looking for and asking for that may not be initially part of that coverage. That there's the loss of time. There's also
Mhm.
what it's going to take us to get back and running. And then there's that horrid part of negotiating and some type of a payout if it's ransom or something else. Talk me through those different pieces, and are they now just all in the same one? You're getting one, you're
Yeah.
getting them all, or you laugh. Apparently, I've hit on something here. You know that there's something else going on.
Well, I've been selling cyber liability policies for years. And, first of all, when we first started selling it, it was like, you were taking candy from a baby and nobody was having claims. And all of a sudden, the world changed and, everybody was looking for a quick buck in that arena and everybody was getting attacked. And there was a lot of, big claims that you read about in the paper and heard about on the MSNBC or whatever, and everybody got scared. So the insurance policy kind of morphed into covering a lot of stuff. Then it kind of shrunk down when they had claims that it was very specific and there was a lot of things that weren't covered. And today's policy is definitely broader than it was, and it's very um, descriptive of what it's going to cover, what it's not going to cover. The thing that you don't think about when you have a claim in the cyber world is, the information that you have and the data breach that could happen and it affecting, your customers' lives and them being attacked and them being, breached as well. So there's, PR and public relations, getting your reputation back and there's Fair Credit Reporting Act things that you have to do. And there's a lot of different components of a cyber liability claim that come into play, depending on what industry you are. That there's layers of. It's not just insurance. It's a PR firm, a
Mhm.
credit reporting firm, a lot of other variables that are in there. And the other thing too is third party liability. A third party could come into your facility, or you could go to another facility and cause damage that they could get hacked or they could get disrupted, and you want to make sure you have coverage for that. So ransomware is key. Business income and extra expense is really key. Cover your loss and cover the time that you were down, get your business back up and running as quickly as possible. And then the ransomware piece is another key component. But there's probably four or five more, but that's kind of the gist of the basic coverage, if that makes sense.
So if I'm seeing cyber coverage on my thing, that may not be covering me for all of it. So it
Yeah,
really
you definitely want to
driving in
peel
and
back
having
the
those
onion a bit.
discussions.
Yeah, you want to peel back the onion a bit and really dig deeper. And that's exactly what your insurance broker, has and should be doing, at least on an annual basis every now to explain that to you.
And is there, in working through that to get the best coverage, is there, if we have certain security measures or IT infrastructure is put up a certain way, I can imagine you're digging into every piece of that in order to show the risk level.
Yeah, I mean the application is pretty intense, and a lot of times the business owner or the our client would take that application and send it to their IT provider or their IT support people that they outsource that with. They fill out the questions. I remember one of the words that I had to learn was multi-factor authentication, and that was probably 3 years ago. And now everybody has that, and there's like four other different terms that you have to learn now to kind of keep up with all the changes on the computer and technical side. So it's definitely an exercise, and you got to stay on top of it for sure.
What are some of those, you had mentioned the client where they had something. What are some of maybe those other client experiences that I always like to learn from other people's experiences and not learn it the hard way on my own?
Sure.
Uh, what might be some of those experiences where you look back going, I'm glad that we did the right thing at the time and got them that coverage, because you think it's never going to happen until it happens to you.
Yeah, I mean we've definitely insured some concerts, some events, and weather cancellation policies or something that are really really expensive. But excuse me, but sometimes the client doesn't want to pay for that. And a couple times the client didn't want to and had to cancel the concert, the music festival because um, you know the weather was too traumatic and the city basically shut them down that they were, doing the event in. And it cost them thousands and thousands of dollars. And for, probably 10 grand, they could have bought a policy that would have covered them and given them some of their fixed costs back from that concert. You know, you said you wanted to party with me, or I'll be the person you'd invite to a party. I have another small nonprofit company, nonprofit community organization that's having a big music arts festival. And, they didn't want to buy a 1 day policy for $200. And they had some situations arise that cost them like $20,000. So, it's really the communication. Hey, let me know what's going on. Let's look at the policy to make sure it'll cover you. And the communication aspect is really critical to working with clients and your customers to make sure that you're asking the right questions and they're telling you the right stuff. End story.
Yeah, and that's where we had talked about getting together in business triggers on it would have never occurred to me to say we've got this big event coming up. I'm
Yeah.
sure that in your list of questions, you're bringing that out. Let me start throwing some what ifs out at you
Sure.
what if I'm taking,
Yeah.
all right, you're ready to bat
Volley.
these out. I
Yeah,
love,
let's volley. Yeah.
we're going to come up with a new game here. When it just triggered all these scenarios in my head. What if I've got a big company annual trip? I'm taking them to an island in the Caribbean or to Cabo. We've got spouses, we've got kids, everyone's coming.
Hmm.
Is my typical coverage going to cover if anything happens on that trip?
Well, the typical insurance answer would be it could and it should, but it depends on where you go. Like usually the North America is really the kind of the bandwidth that your policy's in, and that would
Mhm.
cover Hawaii and some of the Virgin Islands that are associated, Puerto Rico and some of the Virgin Islands. But outside Cabo could be a question mark because Cabo has some volatility down there and things like that. So that could stretch the coverage a little bit. So it would be definitely one of those things that you would have to dig deeper outside the country. Europe and things like that, I would recommend getting some travel accident coverage to cover that situation. You can get it for a specific term of your trip, and that's pretty inexpensive and that's easy to do. So that's how that situation would play out, I think.
As I imagine, things happen. I've known individuals go on vacation on a bike, flown off the bike, dislocated shoulder, and not only does their flight need to be changed, there's been special airlift
All right.
situations.
Yeah.
This is a
Evacuation. Yeah. It-
evacuations. You need to get home. You've got to have intermediate surgery, and then you get home and the full surgery later. This is these are company trips. And as an
mhm.
owner, you feel responsible for every single person at every single time. I imagine it's one of those calling and doing some investigative research, contacting my insurance experts, all of them saying, here's what's going on. Y'all talk and figure out all these scenarios. Let's find out in advance how they're going to be handled and who I'm going to call, not when it's happening.
Well, most of the time, if you're in the United States and in North America, it's going to be considered workers' compensation anyway, because they were on company time and it was basically company event. It could be covered that way, but it's cheaper to outsource it and get the travel accident coverage generally for your event to cover key employees and situations like that. So that's a tough curveball to hit, and it's one that would require some discussion. But sometimes you pay for it with an American Express card. They have some coverage. You pay for it depending on how you pay for it, who you use. Travel agencies or travel companies provide some of that coverage too. So it might not necessarily fall back on me, your insurance broker, but there's other ways to handle that coverage. So it's worth a discussion, certainly.
What are some of those scenarios where you thank goodness that that coverage was in place? Because anything can happen from one of your employees is on a client site and either they get injured or they accidentally injure someone else, to cyber coverage, to uh, employee coverage. You talked about third party. What are some of those where you're so glad it was in place because it really could have um, just dismantled the business or imploded the business?
Well, one of the things I look at that's, under valued, I think, is employment practices liability. You have 35 employees. You can't control and manage them on a day-to-day basis. You're not a school teacher. You're not sitting in front of them, teaching them in class and things like that. So they're doing their thing, and some, some are good eggs and some are bad eggs, right? So, employment practices liability covers, your employees in the workforce and what they do to other employees, what they do with customers, and that, indemnifies you for wrongful termination, wrongful acts, and things like that. And that's a great coverage to have. That's kind of underutilized, and one of those things that you have that you don't think about, and you're very thankful to have it if things go wrong quickly. Hopefully that answers one of your
Yeah.
questions.
And the other thing that I hear a lot is I'm hesitant to report a claim
True.
because that's going to increase my deductibles next, or increase the policy. I want it. I don't
Yeah,
want
increase
to,
the
yeah,
premium. Yeah.
increase the premium. And I've heard stories on both sides of it too. I don't want to report anything until I absolutely have to. But then I've also heard some stories where, because you didn't report it when the first incident happened and it's out of the current year policy, it's not going to be covered.
Yeah, I mean, there are some fine lines to getting things covered and not covered, and communication and reporting is really, really important. Sometimes, what I recommend doing is call it in and say, hey, this is for reporting purposes only. I want this to be on record. I don't think it's going to be a claim. I don't want anything paid out. And depending on the situation, most carriers will allow you to do that, and it won't play against you and, the renewal numbers. And if nothing is paid out, you'll be free and clear with that. But it will be on record saying you did advise the insurance company that this happened, and that, you want to be cautious and be forthcoming with the information. So I highly recommend that. Now, certain policies have certain triggers, and it gets a little bit hairier, with workman's compensation, the various states. 24 hours is critical to report a claim. So, that's one of those things that you really, really need to talk to your professional that's advising you, and work through that together quickly. So, claims management is a big deal. The sooner they jump on a claim, there's, lots of statistics and lots of history saying that the
Mm.
quicker they jump on a claim, the quicker they activate the experts, the cheaper the claim is for the insurance company and for you, basically. So you want to be smart in that regard.
What are those triggers or the contributors to? I mean, I've heard stories of insurance going up 15% just annually, or 50% annually. Is it claims? Is it the business growth? Is it the number of employees you've increased that year? What are some of those factors so I'm not surprised when
Well,
it
I
goes
mean,
down?
the exposure basis. So, when you're estimating the renewal numbers at the beginning of the policy period, your sales and payroll are the two big lines of coverage that really dictate premium. So, at the
Mm.
end of the policy period, 30 days afterwards, there's an audit that takes place. So that does directly correlate with the amount of premium you're going to pay. So that does matter. And the customers that we have that have a lot of deviations in that regard. We spend a little bit more time with them, making sure and managing that process so it doesn't jump one way or the other. The last thing we want to do is have our clients overpay for insurance, but underpaying could be just as catastrophic too. So we manage that process a little bit, but those two are big factors that matter. And but you look at natural disasters. Florida has already been beat up with wind and the hurricane stuff. and the wind. And I mean, there's nobody really in Florida really providing insurance coverage. So that's, it's all about supply and demand. So when insurance carriers pull out of a state, it makes a difference, and it matters from a pricing standpoint of what it's going to cost for insurance moving forward. So, you're going to see a lot of factors that play against that, especially coastal. Um, so that matters. Economies of scale, interest rates and things like that matter too for insurance companies. Insurance companies invest the premium and try to make a buck off the investment before they pay claims. So there's a nest egg, so to speak. So that matters. But the cost of living adjustment, there's all insurance always goes up between 3 and 4% a year because of that factor. And you always have to kind of really, if it's under 5 to 7%, it's a good year from an insurance standpoint, and you just basically sign on the dotted line and renew it. But you can look at deductible options and things like that to assume more risk to reduce your premium. So there's options out there, but they're really the drivers. One is environmental, two is, financial, what's going on with the marketplace. And then three is certainly claims. And then four is, your factors, your sales and payroll going up, which would directly correlate to higher premiums.
Yeah, I really picked up on that, sales and payroll. So I have to ask the question, if things happen in economy with business, if my sales go down by 20% and I've got 10% fewer employees, are my premiums going to go down?
They will, yeah, they will. The adjustment can be made midterm, and that's really critical information. I've got a lot of clients in the biotech technology field that, if their product doesn't, the product can be chugging along and doing great, and all of a sudden, if it tanks, they have layoffs and they have to do things quickly. So we have to communicate that and make sure that their policies are modified accordingly to help reduce their fixed costs and lower their overhead, basically.
So this is another trigger of this isn't, we'll sit down once a year and have this conversation. This is as it's happening, calling
Yeah,
insurance
absolutely.
individual,
Yeah.
I need an adjustment. This is truly where it can be a partnership. And these are real dollars that we can put to the bottom line.
It can be.
It's
And,
not just a cost center.
workers' compensation can get expensive via the classifications that you're in. So, if you're a clerical class where you're paying 8 cents per thousand payroll, it's not really a big deal. But if you're electrical electrician, or a plumber or something like that, it could really mean thousands and thousands of dollars that would be saved immediately off the bottom line. You really wouldn't be sensitive to. Even manufacturing classes can get expensive too. So you just, again, it's all being accessible, answering your phone. Do you have your broker's, cell phone? Does he answer it? Does it go to a call center? Things like that. And, accessibility is really, really important.
What piece of advice, you've been doing this, because we know each other, I can joke. You've been doing this almost as long as I've been alive, because I do look so young here.
You
Uh,
are.
like, we, what piece of advice would you give business owners, just as a general rule of thumb, to be smart about their insurance coverage, be smart about that cost and expense, or be smart about partnering with their insurance expert?
I mean, it's a great question. I had a recent success out of the blue. I had a client, a prospect that I worked on 4 years ago, and we couldn't find a market that would write their insurance. They were in transportation, and transportation is pretty volatile, and it's hard to find good carriers for it. And I couldn't find a market that would write them. Well, the guy came back to me and said, "Hey, 4 years later," I said, "I'm tired of my broker. I'm tired of the situation. I really want you to handle all my insurance." And I got the opportunity to do that. But needless to say, it wasn't a great situation for me because it was still transportation, still very tough to find a market. And his insurance costs went up, probably 60% of what he was paying last year. But he trusted me. He knew that I was going to work every angle I could to get him the best price available. And, that's the conversations that you have to have with your clients. You have to have somebody that you trust, that know is going to pay attention to you and work your business like it's his, he's a part of it. And that's what I do. I mean, I spend the time to learn what they do. I sit in the trucks with them. I sit on the dock with them. I really learn as much about what their business does. So I can cover all the exposures that they have with the insurance companies that I put in front of them, and it requires a lot of time, and it requires a lot of patience and lots of questions. I ask lots of questions, but eventually I don't have to ask as many questions because I know what's going on. I know the people that I can ask the questions to and get the answers. So you really want to have a trusted advisor, Kristen, and we've had that relationship for a long time. And you learn the hard way, cut my teeth on transportation. I've diversified my book of business because of relationships. But I handle startups and I handle, $100 million companies. So you really handle the small ones just like you handle the big ones. You got to ask the right questions, you got to develop the relationships, and you got to become the trusted advisor to be successful and protect their company. So
That's interesting. So my takeaway from that is it's someone that you trust, and not just because you've known them for 20 years and maybe went
yep.
to school together. Someone that you trust that's going to do the right thing for your business, not theirs. And two, someone is going to go on a ride along. Someone's going to come down. I love that. I'm going to go down to the dock. I'm going to watch their business for a few hours. I'm going to ask the questions. I'm going to be curious. Um, that's a good question for any of our current provider. I think whether it's a CPA, an attorney, anyone that we are trusting to help us do the right thing in our business, can we ask them questions about our business and they know the answers to it,
Yeah,
right?
that's
That's
great. Yeah.
that's where we go from transactional to strategic. Are we checking off the tasks and activities, or are we strategically thinking what's coming ahead and let's build around it? Because you now know what questions to ask. You know the business on the inside out. And I would challenge each of us to do that with anyone we're working with, insurance or otherwise. Uh, See how much of our business they really understand. Because if you don't understand the business, how are you protecting it?
Yeah, it's funny because you bring that up. It triggers a thought in my head. Generally I'm working on for-profit businesses, and there's a business owner, and with some of my connections in DC, as you know, we got engaged with a nonprofit, and it's a really really big nonprofit. They do a lot of really good things in DC, and they feed people, they affordably house them, and they really changed people's world for about 10,000 people they serve, 10 to 12,000 people they serve in the community down in District of Columbia. And they sent me an RFP, and I've never really worked on an RFP before, but some of the questions that they ask, you really look internally and say, hey, that's a kind of interesting question, but I wasn't successful with the RFP because I didn't know enough about them. And my style is I get my hands dirty and I spend literally hours and hours and hours meeting people within the organization. And the RFP was great, but it was all about me, which is not what they wanted to hear. And I really needed to learn more about their company. So I said, perfect. Give me another 6 months or 8 months, and I'll come back with a better answer to my RFP because I want to immerse myself in your business, in your organization, help raise some, needy some money for your organization, help donate some products to the needy people and make a difference. So you can trust me, and then hopefully the insurance will be you'll understand where I'm coming from to attack your risk management program. So we'll see what happens. It's the largest account I've ever worked on, next to the Olympics in Washington D.C. and Baltimore back in the day. But it's the largest account I've ever worked on. I really think I can add value, but it's being able to do the Kieffer stuff that makes me different than other brokers that matter, and that's how I'm successful.
Heartfelt, and thank you for sharing kind of your years of expertise and experience and what we should be expecting from, I would say, not even that relationship, from that partnership. And I would challenge us all to go about how we serve our customers in the same way that you serve yours. Kieffer, thank you so much for joining me today, and it's always fun to get into these conversations. Anytime we can lower our risk and
Yeah.
focus on growing our business, anything else in between is a distraction, and we want to surround ourselves with the right people who are mitigating those distractions. And when they do come along, they're handling them so we can do what we do best and grow our business. Thank you, Kieffer.
Kristen, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure, and I really love our time together. Thank you.
Until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.